Alright, so next on our list of coasters to do is Fury 325. This is easily the best coaster ever made by B&M, so let's go. So Fury 325 stands at 325 feet with a 325 foot drop. It has a total track length of 6,603 feet. It reaches a top speed of 95 miles an hour. It has a maximum vertical angle of 81 degrees. And like I said, this is easily the best ride B&M has ever built. So anyways, let's dive into the ride experience. Let's go. Alright, so you begin by climbing this chain lift hill, and it's a pretty quick chain, gets you to the top pretty quickly. Given that it's also a 325 foot tall coaster, it still takes about a minute to get to the top. Once you're at the top, you have a brief moment to take in all of your surroundings, and on a nice clear day, you can see as far as downtown Charlotte, which is 15 miles away. Now that you've gotten your sightseeing done, you proceed to go down this 325 foot drop, and this is easily the best drop ever put on a coaster. You are absolutely falling for what feels like an eternity. Once you start to level out from the drop, you pull some serious positive G's to the point where every single time I've ridden this, especially later in the season, you really start to gray out at the bottom of the drop. So when you come up into the first turnaround, you actually come up and then you level out rather quickly, and you get a nice little pop of ejector as you're turning into this bank. And then as you're going through this turn, you actually steeply drop back down and you get some more airtime. Once you reach ground level, you then come back up and you pretty much do the same thing but at ground level. So you're basically going through B&M's version of a S-bend, but the tops of the turnaround are rather flat. So as you're in this bank turn, you're getting airtime going into it and you're getting airtime coming out. And you make two of these S-bends. And then you come into what is the most legendary element on this ride, which is the treble clef. You start off by steeply banking upwards, and you pull some crazy positive G's. You feel all the blood rush straight to your legs. It gets very tingly. And then you get to the top and you kind of slow down a little bit just for a second, but it turns into floater that just gets stronger and stronger until it's borderline ejector. Once you dive off of the treble clef, you don't fall back into your seat until you're in that tunnel. Proceeding the tunnel, you come up into another bank turn. You don't really get any airtime going into it or out of it, but it still is a very fun turn. Once you leave the bank turn, you then go down a very shallow slope, and you just feel the train getting faster, and you come up to this airtime hill, and depending on the day, you'll get anywhere from flowjector to full-blown ejector. Of course, that is very dependent on whether the trims are hitting at all at that particular moment. Then you come into what is probably the weakest moment of the ride, which is the helix. And even still, even though this is a very weak moment, this is still a very fun moment. Because at one point in the helix, you're going underneath all of these supports, and some of these supports have some of the most legendary hand choppers. You can even see it in some of the POVs, just how close this support comes to hitting you. Once you're done with the helix, you then come into an airtime hill where you'll get anything from flowjector to ejector. Proceeding this airtime hill, you're going to come up into the final airtime moment of the ride, and you're going to get anything from flowjector to ejector, once again depending on if that trim hit or not. Following this airtime moment, you then gracefully start to come back up and you land back into the brakes, and that is the end of the ride experience. So with all that being said, every single ride has its positives and negatives. So let's start with the positive. So positive number one has to be that drop. It is easily one of the best drops ever put onto any coaster ever. You're just falling forever, and it feels so much longer in person than it does like on video. Positive number two easily has to be the treble clef. That's easily one of the best elements put on any coaster. It's right up there with lightning rod's quad down. And then positive number three easily is all of the airtime moments and the rapid fire transitions. Everyone talks about it, and quite honestly, even though it's one of the most talked about things with this ride, it still isn't talked about enough. Now it's time to move on to some of the negatives with the ride. So negative number one has to be that helix. Like I said, it's probably the weakest part of the ride, and that ultimately is because when you're in it, it's kind of obvious that it is there just to increase the track length. Negative number two, and the final one, and it's also a little bit of a nitpick, has to be those seatbelts. I understand why they're on there. Cedar Fair likes putting seatbelts on rides because it helps lower their insurance costs, but this ride was already getting 30-second dispatches whenever I went back in November, and if they did not have those seatbelts, they would be getting basically perfect dispatch times. Anyways, guys, that should conclude my review of Fury 325. This is still one of the most intense coasters ever made. I wouldn't say it's as intense as, say, Lightning Rod or especially I-305. I-305 is a special kind of intense, but this is just one of those rides that I get that tingling feeling just thinking about it. It's just such a cool and fun ride, and I just love everything that it's done for Carowinds, and it opened up the floodgates for that park. This is easily what makes a trip to Carowinds worth it. After all, no one's traveling to Carowinds to ride Hurler. Everyone's going to Carowinds to ride Fury. By the way, I want to give a shout out to Coaster Hipster for providing this off-ride footage. I'll link his channel in the description. Anyways, guys, if you like what you see, don't forget, hit that like button, post us a comment, let us know what you think. Keep in mind, this is just my opinions and mine alone. If you've ridden it, you probably have different opinions, and I really want to hear them. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is Alex from Central Florida Enthusiast. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll hit you guys up later. Bye.